Hi everyone, it's Henry here, and in this video I'm going to go through how I converted up the Praetor for the recent White Scars army that Games Workshop asked us to paint for the launch of Horus Heresy 2nd edition. Now, I kind of ran out of time to do everything that I wanted to do to him for the one that I painted up for the launch, so I'm going to redo him in this video with a couple of extra tweaks and get him exactly how I want him. So I've got the sprue, I've got Khosrow Khan, and I've got a few little extra bits and bobs here that we're going to add in. Let's get to it. For tools, I'm going to use a plastic glue. This is by Revel, so it's a thicker plastic glue with a needle applicator. And I'm going to use Tamiya extra thin cement. That's just to help sort of clean up. You can almost use it like a bit of a gap filler as well, and help smooth things out. We're going to use some sprue cutters, hobby knife. I've got a brand new blade for the hobby knife as well. And then rounding it out, some sanding foam or a foam sanding sheet by Tamiya. If we take a look at the instructions, you can see that this guy builds pretty simply. This stage 2B is a really important one, and it's one I messed up when I did him the first time round. Basically sort of gives you a proper neck hole, so it's really easy then to drop in whatever heads you want. Yeah, I completely messed that up, so I will definitely be remembering it this time and not having to pull apart a glued together model. But as you can see from the instructions, you can actually build him up in a very simple way, and I think they're eminently convertible, both these Praetor models. Now, if we have a look at the sprue, you see what I'm sort of talking about. Although he's got lots of bits and bobs on him, and although he goes together maybe in a slightly different way than we're used to with Space Marines, certainly the older kits, there's still, it's still simple parts that he breaks down into. The only shame really is the shoulder pads. They're these lovely ornate pads, but the way the cloak attaches, it looks lovely, but the way it attaches means that we're unable to use them if we're not going to use the cloak. And I don't want to use the cloak for this guy. I just don't think it works for this character in my mind. So I'm going to replace the shoulder pads with these plastic Mark II ones that you get on the vehicle accessory sprue with the Spartan. So this is that little neck bit that I was on about. I'm really looking forward to seeing what people do with these Praetor models. This one I liked from the moment we saw it, and I'd had this idea to do this sort of Tetsubo armed Praetor with it. Now this is typically how I'll approach painting gluing all the parts together. So I'll use the thicker glue initially, locate the bit. Something I find useful is to try and always put the glue on the piece that I'm sort of not moving, as it were. Took a lot of learning to get okay with plastic glue, I found, because I came back into the hobby largely through Forge World and resin models. I didn't really use plastic glue for years. I was used to using sort of pins and super glue and stuff, so it takes a bit of getting used to, I found. And then what I'll do is use the extra thin and just basically pin wash that in there, and it just helps smooth out those joints so you don't get any blobs of the glue. So we've built him up to that step. I think it was step 3 or 4 in the instructions. Nice simple build, and you can see that the cloak not being on there isn't a problem. You lose a tiny bit of detail on the back of that piping on his left arm. If it really bothers you, you could add it back in very easily with a little bit of sculpting putty. It doesn't bother me enough to even warrant doing that. But the rest of the model's all there. It's not how it is on some models where the cape means they cut away a bunch of the model at the back. Now for the heads, I wanted something quite standout, I guess. So the idea behind this character was I wanted to dive into the sort of feudal Japanese kind of vibe with him. I didn't just want all White Scars to be Mongolian. They're more interesting than that. And for a lot of them, the horsehair plume, I've been using these ones that I found on the Stormcast Vanguard kit, Vanguard Hunters. But I actually, although I did that on the one that I painted up for the launch set, now I've had a chance to sit and think about the model, I'm not entirely sure I want the plume on him. I actually think it might help him stand out not having the plume on there. So I'm going to try the helmet here, which I think is more ornate and fits more that vibe that I'm going for. So I'll fill in the whole little bit of plastic putty, and I'll fill in the little air bubble on his chin as well. And we'll see what it looks like when it's all together. And if I need the plume, then I'll pin that and glue that on just like I did on the one I did for the launch. Now for the shoulder pads, there's just a couple of little knobbly bits here you've got to clip off if you want to put normal shoulder pads on, and then they fit lovely. There's no issues, there's no weird pipes, there's nothing like that. And again, the arms, although I didn't show it, it's very easy to leave the arms and put entirely new arms on him. You know, there's clear room all around them. They'd be very easy to just sort of razor saw off and you'd be laughing. I'm going to pick up quite a few of these and play around with them. I really, really like. The other Praetor's nice, don't get me wrong, but this is the one I want for my army. So the last little bit you've got to watch out for with the shoulder pads is there's these two extra sort of doodads that add into the chain link and that how I think they support the chainmail that's on his chest. And they go onto the shoulder pad rims on the originals. And thankfully, it's very easy to just attach them to the shoulder pad rims on whatever pad you choose to replace them with. I guess the only way it wouldn't work is if you were to use pads without a rim on, so just the very plain Mark 6 pads. But he's a Praetor. He needs to be a bit more ornate. So I think you'll be absolutely fine. And all I've done there is use the fact that the knife is super sharp, so I gently pressed it in. And was then able to manoeuvre it around enough, and then when the plastic glue cured, that was strong enough to then pull it off the knife. Now the actual maul or the mace itself, the Tetsubo, I'm sure my pronunciation's awful, but yeah, as soon as I saw this model, I knew I wanted to make this conversion. I was racking my brains for a part, and then I was like, I bought that Raven Wing biker set, isn't there like a power 2x4 or something in there, and then noticed it was a perfect end really to make the mace with. Going to be a little bit tricky cutting out what we need to get, so this is where I wanted the brand new blade. Now I've been using these Swan Morton scalpel blades for about 6 months now. I ran out of my X-Acto blades and I started using these. I'm not entirely sure about them. I'm sure some of it will be user error, but I certainly have started wearing safety specs when I'm doing a lot of cutting like this now, because I'm having them snap on me fairly regularly, which I didn't have happen with any of the X-Acto blades. Now you could argue I should be using a razor saw or something for this part, but I wanted the knife, I needed the really clean cut. I couldn't afford to lose really anything of the detail there, so just had to take my time with a brand new blade, push in, and so you can sort of see it more here on the flat. You almost are still sawing, but you're just using that pressure and the sharpness of the blade to do it. But yeah, be super careful when you're doing this sort of thing. Yeah, it's pretty scary when these blades snap. It really is. But you can see the above his right. No, hang on. How's he holding it? That's his right hand or his left hand? The top hand. You can see it cuts off really easily, his left hand. But the piece in the middle, where we've removed the blade of the axe, we've got this slightly strange sort of flattened off area, and because there's rivets and there's a little rim running around the piece, it doesn't look right where you cut it off. For me anyway, it would bug me. And the fact is that faces forwards when this is glued onto the model. If it was hidden 180 degrees the other side of the pole arm itself, wouldn't bother me at all. I'd just leave it as is, no one's going to see it, but it's bang at the front, so I wanted to just tidy it up a little so it wouldn't bug me. So I'll take some of the sanding sponge here. I'm just going to slowly work away at it until I've more or less smoothed the entire cylinder off, and then that's fine for me. Then the last thing to do is connect the top to the shaft, and for this I'll just use a big old blob of the thick plastic glue and smoosh it on in there. Now the other change that I made for this model than I did for the one I did for the launch box is I really like this backpack. I do think it's really cool with all the skulls on, but I wanted to use this piece from Kasara Khan's backpack. Now I gave this back banner to the other Praetor in the launch kit, but I'll only be running the one Praetor, and this is the one I prefer of the two, so I'm going to use his back piece for it. One thing I found with all of the Mark 6 backpacks is there's a pretty decent mould line running along the top of them all, and you've got these two little rivets that are on the top surface as well, and they just made it such a pain to try and clean that line up. And then I noticed on the box art the Imperial Fists, a lot of them didn't have that rivet on, Now, whether this was because the guys cleaned them off there or because the resin ones didn't have it in originally, I don't know. But I found it the simplest way was just to cut them off, scrape along, sand it, and you're good to go. Now, once he's all together, I've blue tacked the backpack on, just popped his head in, and I blue tacked the hands in for the weapon because that's a lot easier to paint separately. And I'm going to paint this guy up in the next video and show you all the recipes for all the colours that I used when I painted up the army for them. But I much prefer this silhouette to the one I did for the one in the box. I know it's barely different. You know, really all we've lost is the top knot from the head, and we've changed the back banner. But I absolutely love it. This is just one of those models. I think we all have it where you have the vision in your head and then you more or less nail it when you do it. So it's really encouraging me to do a really nice paint job on him, get him based up, looking smart, and make him that focal point. That main leader along with the Stormseer that I'm going to convert up for my army of White Scars. I hope you guys have enjoyed this little look at how I've converted him. And as I say, we'll go through painting him in the next video. We're also going to be following my journey painting up the White Scars into a bigger force, and he's going to be painting up his Sons of Horus, and there's going to be a whole heap of Heresy content from us. So if you're not already, make sure you're subscribed, hit that little bell so you don't miss out on any of the Heresy videos coming up over the next few weeks. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.